Good.
I'm sorry, folks. I think we don't quite have a quorum yet, so we're going to have to wait until some of the members who are missing are with us. Good morning, colleagues. I hope you all had a nice evening last night, and I look forward to continuing our discussions today. I believe we're ready to start with our agenda, but I would first like to draw your attention to some points on the agenda, and actually the co-chair and I would like to make a suggestion to revise the agenda today. So let me just first quickly go through what was planned for today. Agenda item 19 is overview of COP28 guidance. The advisory board is being asked to take note of the COP28 guidance. Then a coffee break from 10 to 10:30. Then agenda item 20 is enhancing the role of national designated entities. The advisory board is being asked to discuss and provide guidance on the note that we have regarding strengthening the NDE's role in developing countries, and also post-implementation follow-up of technical assistance delivered, as well as the global NDE survey. Then agenda item 21 is the task force on prioritization criteria for technical assistance. The board is being asked to consider and approve revised prioritization criteria for technical assistance. Then lunch from 12:30 to 1:30. Then item 22, update on implementing the resource mobilization and partnership strategy. The board is being asked to take note and discuss the information that will be provided. Coffee break from 3 to 3:30. Then from 3 to 5, program of work implementation. Take note, and you'll see that there's quite a bit of information being presented regarding implementation of the program of work. And that's the plan for today. The proposal that Fred and I have is that we really condense the first item on COP28 guidance. We had a presentation and discussion on COP28 guidance relevant to technology and the technology mechanism on Friday at the joint session with the TEC. Therefore, Fred and I propose that we do not ask the Secretariat to give us a presentation on COP28 guidance, but we put aside time for any comments, questions, or points that advisory board members would like to raise during that topic, and then we can move forward and have additional time for the other agenda items. So not necessarily eliminating the agenda item, but really planning to condense it essentially by not asking the Secretariat to give a presentation and just go right into any discussion that members feel would be helpful, bearing in mind that we already had a discussion on this topic on Friday's joint session. Yeah. So again, it's not really revising the agenda item, in fact, but I anticipate that it will really reduce the time that we're devoting to that agenda item and provide us more time for the other points. So I guess I'm just basically asking if everyone is comfortable with dispensing with the planned presentation by the Secretariat, and we simply open the floor to any comments and questions on the topic of COP28 guidance. Yeah. Seeing no objections, we will skip the presentation, and let me just open the floor to any members who would like to make any comments or raise any questions regarding COP28 guidance that includes guidance, of course, from the CMA, from the parties to the Paris Agreement, and again, opening the floor on that topic. Okay, I see no hands from members. Would any observers like to comment on any aspect of COP28 guidance affecting technology or the technology mechanism? Okay, seeing no hands, we just saved an hour. That's very productive. So we are now an hour ahead of schedule. I guess we could go right to the coffee break if people want. But we'll move into the next agenda item. So I'd now like to invite Fred Onduri, our Vice Chair, to take the floor and take us into the next agenda item on enhancing the role of NDEs. Fred, the floor is yours.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm very pleased to guide us through agenda item 20 on enhancing the role of NDEs. I would like to refer you to the documents AB/2024/23/20.1, template for requesting logistical support for NDEs. And also the other document, AB/2024/23/20.2, template for post-implementation follow-up of technical assistance. Those are the two documents. As you may recall, during the last 22nd Advisory Board meeting, there was a specific request to the Citizen Secretariat to design a mechanism that could enhance and facilitate the role of NDEs in developing countries. Without any further delay, I would like to give the floor to the Citizen Secretariat to provide us with an overview on this issue. Rajiv?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a pleasant evening yesterday. We had a nice group and a nice group dinner. It was a bit late, so I can feel that some of us would be a bit sleepy, but nevertheless, my presentation is going to wake all of us because it's on a very important topic of enhancing the role of the nationally designated entities. As you all know, the nationally designated entities are our main stakeholders. They are our focal points with whom the Secretariat interacts. Can we have the presentation in the...
Do you want me to go for it?
Oh. Can it be in presentation mode, please? Yeah, I think the laptop was also yesterday in a group dinner.
Stop sharing, Sandy.
The dinner was so good, eh?
Okay. Second slide.
It is still not. Great. Well, there were various interventions during the last advisory board. We also heard interventions from various NDEs when we conducted the NDE forums on enhancing the role of NDEs. There were some issues with regards to the implementing partners not engaging with the NDEs, and looking at these issues, we tried to find what is the best possible solution, which is not going to lead to extra requirement of resources. So we internally modified some of our processes and how we implement technical assistance requests, and therefore in the response plan, which is prepared after we receive the request, we introduce some mandatory activities, that is creation of a project steering group, and this project steering group would be led by the NDE, and in this group, the appropriate line ministries and stakeholders, focal points of the finance mechanism needs to be included. So the first step in every technical assistance from now onwards would be to create a project steering group. Within the response plan, what we plan to do is organize regular meeting of this project steering group. on an average, the technical assistance of the CTCN is between 12 months to 18 months. So it means we have 2 to 3 project steering group meetings, and these meetings could be online meetings, or depending, it could be a meeting which is organized under the leadership and stewardship of the nationally designated entity. What we also have included as a mandatory activity is that at the end of the technical assistance, there has to be a kind of a final workshop. And in this workshop, we can call it TA, Technical Assistance Closure Workshop. And in this final workshop, it is recommended that the local financing institutions that is and the focal points are invited. This includes the NDAs to the GCF. This includes the JEF operational focal points, and also the multilateral development bank or international finance institutions. If they have offices in that particular country, they also need to be invited. Again, here the intention is to showcase the work of the CTCN and also explore possibilities of further taking it up and scaling it up. So these are the mandatory activities which we have introduced in all the new technical assistance requests from now onwards. Next slide, please. There have been COP decisions, and even the last COP, there was a decision on providing logistical support to the NDEs. And we discussed with the NDEs that why do they need this logistical support, or if CTCN is providing this logistical support, what they are going to do with it. So what we understood from various interactions is the need for the support is to facilitate effective technical and capacity building support to the country, facilitation of in-country activities such as training, knowledge sharing, dissemination of information. The NDEs also expressed desire that there are various national programs which are running, or sub-regional programs which are running, or regional programs, and they would like to participate in this, which was taken into account. And they also required the logistical support so that they can enhance the coordination with other national focal points, and these other national focal points could be from Adaptation Fund, from the Ozone Unit, from the NDAs, the JEF operational focal points, the NDC partnership focal points, etc. And definitely the logistical support is also required by the NDEs so that they can help and support the monitoring and evaluation activities which the CTCN are monitoring of activities. And this monitoring is related to the technical assistance which has been completed, and what further steps the government has taken or any other stakeholder has taken, and reporting back to the CTCN Secretariat. Now, in order to provide logistical support, we have come out with a plan and a scheme, and in the documents which were circulated, the template was there, or template has been prepared. And what we propose is the NDEs may consider submitting requests on an annual basis based on the schedule, on the schedule of NDEs and the CTCN activities in the country. That is the technical assistance request. In the template has been designed so that NDEs can provide detailed information and the cost associated with each of the activity which they are proposing. And the NDEs can submit this request for logistical support on a rolling basis as they progress in implementation. What the Secretariat is proposing, and this is, next slide please. What the Secretariat is proposing is what kind of support can be considered, and this is as per the rules, as per the norms which we follow in the UN system. The support can be considered for organizations of national meetings with other national stakeholders. to promote visibility of actions, that is knowledge sharing, or printing of posters or banners could be considered. Engagement with key stakeholders can be considered as an activity. The NDEs are required to undertake field visits if the technical assistance is implemented somewhere outside in the country. They need to go monitor, do stakeholder consultations for that. It can be considered post-implementation of the technical assistance, if some support is required to leverage future actions and they want to go and have meetings with different line ministries, that kind of activities can be considered. And definitely national campaigns to promote the results or increase the awareness, bring it to the attention of the largest stakeholders, going and interacting in the communities, etc. These kind of activities could be considered. What we are not, what cannot be considered is any kind of an infrastructure requirement which is coming from the NDs, like, you know, purchase of laptops or cell phones, etc., or any international participation to participate in the meeting, such as COPs or SBs. This is because we already are providing support to the NDEs to participate in the regional forums, in the advisory board meetings, and on a selective, on a need basis. We also invite some of the NDEs, or we had. We invite some of the NDEs during the SBs or the COP, depending on the need and the agenda which has been set up. I'm not going to go into the details of the template. This is an internal document which we are going to use and assess the needs of the NDEs once it comes to us, but this template has been prepared and circulated, and it is in your documents. This would have a resource implication, and the resource implication which we have calculated is that if the support which we are providing should not exceed $5,000 per request, and if 30 NDEs request for this support, means we are working in 112 countries, so if we take just 1/3 of the NDEs request for this kind of support, because in our interaction with some of the NDEs, they also mentioned that they don't require support. There are some countries which presented that they don't require support, but there is a large majority which also said that they require support. So if we calculate $5,000 per request, 30 NDEs, it is $150,000. Means this is just an upfront cost, but also we need to see that 30 requests means 30 additional contracts which the Secretariat has to frame. And this is going to be as per the rules and regulations of UNEP. We have a provision, a legal agreement, which we call for this small amount SSA, small scale agreement, small scale funding agreement. And to manage these 30 additional contracts, the Secretariat has to have additional staff, the GS staff, as we say, at least 2 in numbers, because we are very sure that it's not just 30 additional contracts. It would require their closure. It would require extension. It means on a multiple basis. So this would be an additional resource implication on the Secretariat. I think means I would like to stop here and see if there are any questions before moving ahead with my presentation, which includes couple of slides on post-implementation follow-up of technical assistance delivered and the ND survey.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv, for the presentation. Colleagues, I would like to invite you to discuss and provide guidance on how to enhance the role of NDEs. So I would like to open the floor for comments and insight. Colleagues, please remember that the objective of this open discussion is to share our experience and the ideas on how best to enhance the role of NDEs. And I think you recall, sorry, were you hearing me?
People online did.
Okay.
Maybe we should start again.
Sorry. Thank you, Rajiv, for your presentation. Colleagues, we are invited to discuss and provide guidance on how best to enhance the role of NDEs. So I would like to open the floor for comments and insights. Colleagues, please remember that the objective of this open discussion is to share our experiences and ideas on how best to enhance the role of NDEs. And the guideline will be as follows. We shall first of all give the opportunity to the advisory board members, and after that, then we shall give it to also the observers. And I think, I don't know who was first, but I saw Halima, I think I saw your flag first. I hope I'm right. Thank you. Halima.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I just want to say that the role of the NDEs cannot be underscored. If we do not have the NDEs, there's hardly going to be any work for the CTCN Secretariat, Advisory Board, and whatever is attached to the CTCN to do. So I did hear Rajiv, and thank you for all the work that you do, talking about the implications of having to provide this logistic support of 5,000 to the NDEs. I would think the 5,000 should be a starting point even actually, considering everything we had at the Africa NDE Forum. I understand from what Rajiv has said that there will be a need for additional resources and need for additional staffing and all that and all that. But considering the kind of work and the importance of the NDEs, we may have to look at those implications and see the best and most effective way to ensure that the NDEs get the support that is required. As I said, if they are not there, we don't have what to do. The second part is perhaps I need a clarification on what Rajiv said about provision of feedback to CTCN in terms of M&E. I would think just the M&E might not be enough. Is there a situation where the NDEs would also provide reports on what they have been able to do? I don't know what the situation is, but if there isn't, alongside the M&E, there is a need for NDEs to send in reports of what they do. And when the logistic support is given, we may also consider the fact that before you issue the support, the NDE demonstrates how well they have progressed in the work that they're supposed to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Halima. On my list, I have Christopher, Lydia, and Ichiro, in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. And I think that really this proposal builds on the discussion that we had at the last advisory board meeting in September 2023, and to have a dedicated budget line for the support for NDEs. So we are very positive to the development of this document and thank the Secretariat for doing so. We believe that this really helps formalize the support to the NDEs and makes the whole process more transparent. And we have some suggestions on how we believe that this could be enhanced even further. We ask to include a reference in the document to prioritize LDCs and SIDS. We would also like to include a reference to geographical balance and balance between NDEs, so that we don't have one country requesting support 20 times and then there are no resources for other NDEs. We also ask that section 4.2 on ad hoc basis is removed and that this is perhaps more seen as an annual process or an annual exercise. You mentioned that you would need to have 2 members of staff working on this, so this is essentially a 10% increase of the CTCN staff. So is this already budgeted for, either in the 2024 budget, or do you foresee that to be included in 2025? And last but not least, you mentioned that you will not support international travel, but then later in the document on the last page, it's included in the table on page 6. So we ask that this reference to international travel is removed so to make the whole document consistent with the table on page 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Lydia?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Very impressive. And I have one comment and one question. Actually, I encourage to arrange continuous regional meeting with NDEs under Climate Weeks or another event hosted by the UNFCCC. These meetings highlight the issues concerned by the NDEs, the showed problems or requests from NDEs. I think I heard it in the last regional meeting in Nairobi last years. My question, if the 5,000 US dollar is not enough, is there possible coordination from the CTCN to facilitate financial support from the GCF NDA readiness budget, and what is the procedures for this? Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Next, Ichiro.
Thank you very much. Listening to Rajib's explanation, I realized that there will be a significant implication about both cost and also in terms of staff capacity of a CTCN secretariat. So considering that, and there will be a very strong demand from NDEs. So I think there will be a situation that Secretariat is flooded with a lot of requests for support from NDEs. Then I'm wondering if those requests should be processed first come and first served based. But I think it's not a good way to deal with. So I support the suggestion from Christopher that there should be a kind of prioritization the guidance on what requests from which country should be prioritized. For example, I support Christopher's suggestion that requests from LDC and SIDS should be prioritized, etc. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting the complete set of guidance, but I think it will be necessary to have some kind of a guidance on prioritization. Thank you.
Thank you. And next on the list is Stephen.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you to the Secretariat for this excellent work. Just an additional question on the staffing, the proposed staffing allocation. Would this be covered under the NDEs and network engagement item that we discussed last September and put in the budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Okay, Annie?
Thank you. I support my European Union colleagues' points as well as my Japanese colleagues' points. This is a significant outlay of resources. We fully realize and accept the need for NDEs to be able to do their work, and that they are an important part of the operations of the CTCN. But keeping in mind the finite resources, I have similar questions to what my colleague from Greece is suggesting. we would need to have a bit of a sense of where those resources would be coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. I don't see any flag from the AB members, so permit me to now go to the observers. And on my list of observers, Renuka on the line.
Thank you very much, Chair and Co-Chair. Because I'm introducing myself, like speaking myself for the first time for CTCN, I will like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Renuka Thakur, and I'm founder of Global Sustainable Futures Network. I work mainly with the ground level people in Global South. Here I am been nominated by Ringo and Future Earth. So, and again, these are my personal views. I believe that NDE's role is very, very important in technology mechanism and also the looking at all these activities. I wondered how you can, few things are needed to increase their visibility, especially in a role that they are connecting to the people's need to the high level policies, because I see NDEs working at a country level, but however the people don't know whether how they connect to the global policies, and therefore their role needs to be very much enhanced. Visibility needs to be increased, networking needs to be increased, especially with the educational institutions like universities and so on, where young people, like masses of young people, come out every year, and also in the research area where plenty of research are taking place, but they do not have the way to move forward. So if they work with such a community, I think plenty of ready-made things can be available and make their role easier, as well as our policies can be dispersed into the community very easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Renuka, and I'll take Abdul Hamid and followed by Sarah, then I'll come back to the advisory board members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Abdul Hamid, working as the ND for Bangladesh and working as the Director General of the Department of Environment. It's the kind of paperwork I need to focus on, because whenever you will be proposing a project working group, so there should be some structure who will be chair and who will be operating this one, with some guidelines about the membership as well, because the stakeholders and the public officers who will be going to engage with this group, they will be asking for the formal setup of this committee. So I would like to request to give a formal setup of this committee. Small is beautiful, maybe 5 to 10 members, including all these stakeholders and things. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul Hamid, and Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm Sarah from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center. Speaking also from the experience in implementing technology needs assessments in close to 100 countries, and also being the implementer of numerous technical assistances for the CTCN, I acknowledge that the budget resources are important for NDEs, but I think there are also additional means to strengthen the role of NDEs, and I was wondering in this regards whether there is do the NDEs have a terms of reference? I don't know, but if not, then I was wondering whether that could be an option to strengthen also the mutual expectations from the outset of entering into a role as NDEs, both on the side of the CTCN and the institution to which the NDE sits within. And that could also contribute to strengthening the role of the NDE from an institutional viewpoint in the position then of the country the NDE represents. Thank you. So that's also a question if there is a terms of reference.
Thank you, Sarah. And I don't see any other observer. Is there an observer? Yeah. Any observer? So I'm going back to the AB members. If there's any person who has come up with new ideas, please. I can see Katie.
Hello, everyone. So I won't say anything about NDEs and the role, because I'm pretty sure in this role everyone knows how important they are, and especially the role that play in the citizens' services, let's say so. And work. So I want just to emphasize what Christopher said about the geographical balance, and if we start talking about the prioritization, or I think it's really very important, especially for me, because I've started, as you also know from yesterday, that there is like from Eastern European countries, so there is a lot of really only 4% of technical assistance goes there, yeah. And one of the problems for us, also what Rajiv said, and what I also found out, it's because of there are no NDs. Some of the NDs that were appointed before, so there was no, like, they didn't really either hand it over, or they are not interested in the citizens' activities. So there is really a gap. And 2 weeks ago, I've started like really to try to get these countries on board, and they to nominate either new NDs. So for me, it will be really interesting and important then if these NDs, new NDs will be there, they to really have access to the resources. So I think geographical balance and fairness is also important for us. So I support that part of what Christopher said.
Thank you, Katie. I think we have exhausted the list. And first of all, let me again thank Rajiv and the Secretariat for this very wonderful work that they have done. I think they have rightly followed the COP decision, and it's a very good initiative because earlier we had a lot of discussion and the challenges on how we could address the plight of the NDEs. Now, hearing from your comments, I would also like to just to add, I firstly put aside my hat as the current chair of the process, but I would like to also say that the NDEs are going to operate on behalf of the technology mechanism. The use of logo, maybe they need to be guided, because I think they may need to use the logo of the CTCN. And I know the rules about the logo, so we need to guide them on the use of this logo, because it is also one way of raising the visibility of CTCN. How can we guide them to use the visibility, to use the logo of the CTCN, the logo of the tech, and then also is UNEP anywhere in this process? So that those are issues that we have to consider. And of course, they'll also use the logo of their respective governments. So that's a very important issue that we shouldn't ignore. Then on the issue of financing, I'm happy that the slide is still there. The issue of the total value not exceeding 5, I think we should be flexible on that. Because the NDEs may need more than that. How do we put the statement to reflect that when resources become available, there's opportunity to increase the provision, not to limit it to 5,000, because 5,000 can be there for the next 5 years, and that may limit the operations of the NDEs. And then we also have the possibility of supporting NDEs. Let's say if NDE has a specific action and the resources are more than the resources required are more than the 5, is there a way where some members of the ABs or bilaterally, NDs can be supported. That one can be, we can leave it open, but I just want to point out that in case you have NDEs stranded with a very important activity because of financial resources, is there a way this communication can be extended to other members of the advisory board from developed countries if they can come in to top up? And that one was just my thinking. And then also the rule of the capital procurement of the UNEP. I see with modern technology, I think all of us in this room, the AB members who have got laptops, and they are very useful. Laptop has ceased to be a luxury equipment. It is a real essential equipment. So if we are talking about the operations of NDEs, I see laptop is listed as one of the don'ts of the UNEP or of the rules that the money allocated should not be used for the procurement of laptops. I request for flexibility on this. If there's a way we can just the laptops, because I know what laptops can do to the NDEs to improve on their delivery. So those are my observations. And then reporting, I think the NDEs, we have discussed this before, that some of the duties of the NDE is going to be follow up on the technical assistance, because technical assistance can cause some other interventions within the country of the NDE. So we would like to know that the technical assistance provided by the CTCN has caused impacts on the ground, and this will be another role of the NDE to follow that and report back. Indeed, I don't know who suggested the issue of reporting back. I think on the progress, I think that is very important that the NDs report back. And I think all these discussions here, the proposals and so on, I think may form part of the terms of reference for the NDEs. Indeed, in order to guide them effectively, we need to come up with the specific terms of reference for the NDEs. And I request the Secretariat, as they look at the template to be filled by the NDEs, they also consider having a specific terms of reference for the NDEs. Those are the issues that I have. And if there's any additional, I think we still have time. Any contribution? If I Justin?
Thanks, Fred. I just wanted to support what you're saying about NDEs being effectively brand ambassadors for CTCN. And I think this is maybe part of the conversation when we get onto resource mobilization a little bit later in the day, that actually having that connect on the ground and being able to document and demonstrate success, I think will also be very, very helpful towards particularly those we are looking to engage to provide financial support to CTCN. I just wanted to come in and also support, I think there's been some great comments from European Commission, Japan, Greece, Canada, and of course yourself. I'm probably a little bit less worried about the money. I'm probably a bit more concerned about the support staff, because I think we can either consider some pro bono options. I think we should be super creative when it comes to the financing of this. Maybe we can trim a little bit here or there. Maybe we can find some support from outside. I'm just thinking how we actually provide the physical staff to then actually take this forward. So there's maybe two elements to this that we want to factor in.
Thank you, Justin. And I will give the floor back to Rajiv if he has any comments or response to some of the comments raised. Thank you.
Numbers.
Two numbers?
Two staff.
Two full-time staff?
G staff, yeah. Thank you for all the suggestions and the guidance by the board members. I would like to not respond, but try to clarify some of the issues. Reporting by the NDs happened at various steps. Reporting by the NDs happened through the ND survey. Reporting by the NDs also happened at the end of technical assistance request, wherein we try to take their feedback, try to take their feedback. And definitely when we have developed a template and we are going to enter into a legal agreement with the NDEs, which is not going to be on an individual basis, but with the institutions where the NDEs are hosted, it would have a reporting inbuilt into it, because once you consume all the money which is given, they have to definitely report back on what was done, what is the likely impacts, and what is likely the way forward. We take the point from a colleague from European Commission and Japan and other colleagues who have mentioned the need to prioritize the ND request for logistical support from the LDCs and SIDS, and definitely, maintain a geographical balance, which is a bit tricky. Because if you look at LDCs, there is only one LDC in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is Haiti. It is going to be a bit tricky to maintain a kind of exact geographical balance, but we take your point, we note your point, and we'll include it when we are selecting requests for logistical support. We also take your point on this being on an annual basis, and we expect the list, and it would definitely, when the NDEs are going to propose, they would also have a kind of a timeline attached to it on how they are going to use this support, what are the activities, when they are going to do it. So it would be part of the process. I'm sorry that it would have been a kind of an oversight. We are going to remove the last line from the document. There was also a question of how can resources be drawn from the NDAs. As you have seen in the earlier presentation, which was done by the GCF Secretariat, specifically for the LDCs and for SIDS, means the GCF is proposing, I think it was $80,000. My figures may be wrong, but they are proposing some support. NDEs can draw from that, but it has to be an internal agreement between the NDE and the NDA, and there is no role of the Secretariat in it, because the NDAs are going to request that support from the GCF Secretariat. It will come to them, and probably when they are putting that support, NDEs may pitch in for their share or for support which is required. As CTCN Secretariat, we are not involved in that process. It was a very conscious decision not to develop a terms of reference of the NDEs. And this discussion happened in the first advisory board meeting of the CTCN, and the parties were of the view that we are a secretariat, we cannot really define the terms of reference of a national entity. And therefore, we came up with a kind of a manual for the NDEs, and that manual is under revision. We are revising that manual, and this manual, and the revision would include elements of the logistical support, but we cannot develop the terms of reference for the NDEs. They are national entities, and they have their own set of rules to follow for the government. Means we as a secretariat, we really cannot recommend. This is same as trying to identify that who the NDE would be. It is a country-driven process. The countries are free to appoint anyone as an NDE from any institutions. We as a secretariat just accept it. And this is closely in line with why we do not have really a terms of reference. But what we did was that, okay, these are the roles the NDEs are expected to play, and which has not changed, much. Ideally, this scheme can go in full operations from 2025. We can include from 2025, but this year on a pilot basis, we are ready to see and support and report back to the advisory board in the next advisory board meeting on how our experience has been. But this scheme also requires a wider reach out to the NDs, and we are thinking that during these and during the ND forums, we are going to apprise the NDs about it so that they can start considering putting up proposals. So effectively, from 2025, this can be rolled out on a universal large-scale basis. With regards to the use of logos, the CTCN is not a legal entity on its own, and that's the reason why in our logo we have the logo, it's a UNEP logo of UNEP, and UNEP has its own visibility guidelines where it can be used, but definitely when we are partnering the government on a technical assistance request, it does have the UNEP logo. It has the UNEP CTCN logo and also the logo of the national government. So anything which we enter into an agreement, it is a kind of a collaboration and a partnership, and we are guided by the UNEP visibility regulations, and we follow that on the use of logo. Yeah, so I think I don't have any other points on for clarification. But if I have missed something, I would be more than happy to clarify it further. And the two staff which has been mentioned here are the two general service staffs which is required to manage this whole thing.
The flexibility on resources allocation.
Flexibility on the resources, I think, means my proposal from the Secretariat side would be let's begin with this amount, and then let's see what kind of requests are coming to us, and then we can bring it to the attention of the board if we feel a resource constraint. But to begin with, we start this process so that the ball starts rolling, and as it gains momentum, then we can come back and look at the resources which we have, how much we can spare more. And but to begin with, I think in my experience working with in developing countries in with the NDEs, let's start with the small amount, and we'll take it further.
Thank you, Rajiv. Annie seems to be having a very hot, burning issue, and please, can you share with us?
Thank you very much. It's just a request for clarification. In addition to the 5,000 USD for 30 NDEs with the total value not exceeding 5K, which gives us a sense of the cost here. It might be useful for all of us to have an understanding of how much money we're talking about in terms of these two additional staff members to help make this happen for this additional logistical support. So how much would that cost, those two additional staff members?
It depends. I mean, we have to do internal consultations with UNEP. This additional staff members means it depends on where they are based. Their salary scales are based on that. For example, if we are basing it, these two additional staff members close to our headquarters, means in Nairobi headquarters, a kind of a realistic estimate would be something like between $90,000 to $100,000 per year for two. But these are very tentative figures, which I am talking from the top of my head. I have yet not consulted with UNEP HR and admin team. But this is a very tentative estimate.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted discussion on this agenda item, and I really like to thank the members of the advisory board, the observers, the secretariat, and Rajiv for the presentation. I would also acknowledge the role of UNEP in this. I think you've heard, Madame Dechen, you have heard some of the issues coming up here and related to UNEP's mandate. So I hope we shall all work together to help the NDEs to deliver so that we raise the visibility of the technology mechanism in the respective countries. And from the discussion, I've seen that there's enough appetite for us to support the NDEs. And thank you very much for that, everybody. And we move to the next agenda item. So. Yeah, colleagues, sorry for that interlude. We're discussing the process forward, and I think looking at the NDE agenda item, there's also an element of the NDE survey. So I would request the Secretariat also to make a presentation on that agenda item of the NDE survey. And Rajiv, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Next slide. And I'll start my presentation on agenda item 20.2 with a proposal. The advisory board had requested the Secretariat to have a systemic feedback from the NDEs, and this is specifically in relation to the technical assistance which have been completed. Our experience when we were developing this document, which you have all seen, was there are a number of technical assistance requests which CTCN had implemented and which has led to follow-up. And when we started counting the number, a very realistic estimate is we were able to figure out at least 20 to 30% of our technical assistance requests have led to something. And this is either by the support of the government or support of any additional agency which comes in, or support of bank to scale it up. So it had a very positive impact. And therefore, what we are proposing, and this is a very forward thinking, that we'll start the process of systemic post-implementation follow-up. Every year, the CTCN Secretariat is going to send out a kind of a feedback form for a technical assistance which have been completed in the last 2 years to the NDEs, and we expect the NDEs to inform us on if there is any action which has been taken. So we have designed the template. The template was circulated for your perusal, and this is going to lead to clear identification of the actions which have taken after the CTCN's technical assistance have stopped. It would also provide us with guidelines. If we see something substantive happening, we can follow it up by a more detailed evaluation for some of the promising cases and report back as a kind of an impact story to the advisory board members. This is also going to help us in our resource mobilization, because we would be able to show a kind of a larger impact which the CTCN technical assistance has led to. This is going to be an annual exercise, and it would be kind of a mandatory for the NDEs to respond to it, because it would help us. It would help us ascertain the impacts of the work which the CTCN is doing. We propose that this evaluation would happen every time, or we'll send out this questionnaire to the NDEs of respective countries where the technical assistance have been completed, and we'll not do that thing immediately. For example, if the technical assistance has been completed in 2020, we'll send a specific questionnaire in 2022, giving a kind of a 1-year time or 2-year time for the NDEs to get a kind of a real impact, because if we do it immediately, we will not get the kind of things which we are trying to follow up. We are going to do this for all our technical assistance which have been completed, and this we are going to start again in 2025, and this would be a part of our monitoring and evaluation plans. We also had received guidance on the NDE survey from the board. There was an issue that the NDEs did not respond, or the number of respondents to the survey which we conduct along with the tech was not good enough. And I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of the global NDE survey, the results of the global NDE survey which happened in 2022. This happens every 2 years. So this year, again, we are planning to have an NDE survey in 2024. In 2022, there were 53 responses. There were 53 responses, and only 21 out of the 42 countries responded to the first NDE survey. So we have plans on how we can increase this response rate. So what we are doing we did a kind of a back calculation. And the back calculation which we did was there are 163 NDEs in total, both from NX1 and non-NX1 countries. Now, out of this 160 plus NDEs, we are working in 112 countries. So it means that we have interaction with 112 NDEs. There are other NDEs from NX1 countries, NX1 countries around 25 to 30 NDEs, and there are a number of countries which do not see, or which has not either appointed NDEs or have not taken our support. And if there is no NDE, no one responds to it. So what we are trying to do this year is we are dividing our questionnaire in a manner wherein we target the questionnaire to the NDEs which have received support from the CTCN, NDEs which have not received support from NDEs which have not received support from the CTCN Secretariat, and specifically a separate section targeting Annex 1 country NDEs just to get more information about how they would like us to work, which are the areas of priority, what are the institutions they would like us to establish partnerships, or any specific thing they would like us to address in. So this is how we are, and we are going to have targeted campaign for each one of them. For the NDEs which have received support from the CTCN, next slide. For the NDEs which have received support from the CTCN, the questions would be tailored to, how effective our support, how effective the technical assistance was, what are the problems, how do they rate the services, how do they rate the services of CTCN, so forth and so on. This support, next slide. So to say is that we are tailoring our questionnaire with the specific requirements of the NDEs, and there would be a targeted reach out to the NDEs, and this would be based on not just the technical assistance, but it would be based on the other services like outcomes, capacity building, etc. Next slide. As I said, we are going to strengthen our outreach, and we'll follow up after the survey. After the survey has been launched, we will follow up with personalized one-to-one interaction with the NDEs. The regional teams are going to do that in each region, so that this time we get more number of feedbacks. We are also thinking to somehow provide a kind of an incentive to the NDEs. Maybe we have means being in the UN, we cannot offer anything on the capital side of it, but like a prize or something like that. But what we are thinking is we are going to prioritize those NDEs who provide their response and feedback by highlighting their work in our newsletters, by providing them with opportunities to be a speaker in the webinars which we are going to organize, so forth and so on. Next slide. This survey would be launched in all the three languages, English, French, and Spanish. And English, French, and Spanish, we plan to launch this survey in May, that is in the coming month, and go full out with our communication and outreach strategy or communication and outreach functions in the period of May to July, because we have to analyze the results and we have to present it, and it is going to be a part of our annual report, our joint annual report, because it also goes, it is part of the joint annual report along with the tech. It would have a specific section on the tech activities also. So this is a joint survey which is going to be launched, and because we have to report it in the COP also, or in the COP document. It's a part of the joint annual report in the COP document. So this is how we plan to undertake the next steps on the NDE survey. Thank you. This was on the last slide.
Thank you, Rajiv, for that outline of the NDE survey. And colleagues, you'll agree with me that this survey is very important, because it's a part of the monitoring and evaluation that will involve the actions of the NDEs. And of course, they'll be reporting back on the outcomes or the impacts of technical assistance provided by the CTCN. Therefore, I think the issue of survey is very important. You have been told that is going to be annual. This is when we shall really be able to judge, to see the impact of the NDE actions. And we need more guidelines to the Secretariat, if any. And if you so agree, then we nod for this very wonderful presentation on the survey. So I open the floor for your comments. I'll start with members of the advisory board, and then I give the opportunity also to the observers. Advisory board members, any comments? Delay, I've noticed the Christopher, Ichiro, and Sigrid, then Lydia, and then Justin. I think in that order. I hope I won't forget, but please don't forget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred, and also to Rajiv for the presentation. From our side, we're very positive to this exercise. I think it's an important way to really capture the lessons learned from the technical assistance, and it's a way for the Secretariat to know what works and what doesn't. So if you have a project in one country that encounters problems after the technical assistance has been delivered, then the Secretariat can learn from that and design mitigating actions into the next project that they are doing in another country, and that will make the technical assistance more effective, and that's really for the benefit of everyone. For the template, I have 3 brief comments. First of all, on part 2, where we're talking about the enabling environment and technology pathways. It's about policies, laws, regulations, strategies, and roadmaps that are being adopted. I think a good example of that was what Fred mentioned from Uganda on the geothermal energy on Friday. I would add to this, if we could maybe have something on barriers that were removed, because it's not just about creating laws, it can also be about repealing rules that are blocking the adoption of climate technologies. And to give one example, that in some European Union member states, they were not adopting solar panels because there was a very high fee for connecting your house with solar panels to the grid, because they were worried about the stability of the grid. So then when that fee was removed, people started to adopt solar panels and connect to the grid. So sometimes removing rules can really be what enables the adoption. And secondly, on part 4, on the stakeholder engagement, perhaps we could include a reference to women's groups, indigenous groups, something like that, where they consulted afterwards as a part of the evaluation. And my final comment is on, for how many years do we expect the NDE to report on this? Maybe we could say 5 years, so 5 years after the project, we won't bother you anymore. And also that if you have a country that has received several examples of technical assistance, one country that comes to mind is Thailand, for an example, do we want them to do one form for all the support projects that they have got, or would we do one for each of the follow-up projects? Don't have an opinion, but leave it up to the Secretariat to decide what would be best for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Next is Ichiro.
Thank you very much. I also welcome the new initiative of this post-implementation follow-up of technical assistance. I think this is very useful to improve the effectiveness of CTCN support. I was also wanted to know the same point that Christopher mentioned, that there should be some time horizon of the submission. So we cannot ask NDE to annually report forever. So there should be some time horizon. And one question I have related to this point is that this new process apply to only new TA project, or it is applied to all projects which is include those already completed?
Next is Sigrid.
Thanks very much, and a big thanks to the Secretariat for developing this template. I think it's really important, echoing colleagues, really good to monitor the outcomes of technical assistance. So really positive. I just have a small concrete proposal for the template. In section 5 on funding and investments, I propose to collect a little bit more detailed information on the types of finance that was mobilized. So we currently only ask, was any funding leveraged as a result of the TA? So I would propose to add a couple of more boxes where you can tick in whether perhaps public finance was leveraged, was private finance leveraged, was any other finance leveraged, and then perhaps just specify, what then the other finance was. Because when I fill in templates, I have to be honest, when it's only these free boxes where you can fill in whatever you want, sometimes I leave them blank. So boxes are a safe bet, I think, to collect information. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sigrid. And next is Justin.
Thanks, Fred. I just want to support absolutely everything that's already been said. Two thoughts that come to mind, particularly in terms of the last phase of the communications. I don't think we should necessarily wait until November. If there are good examples, if there are good quotes that we can extract, that people are comfortable using, we have opportunities earlier in the course of a 12-month cycle, for example, around things like the UN General Assembly, to actually start communicating. So I don't think we necessarily need to wait till a climate COP to then produce, well, we will certainly wait till the end of the year to produce the whole report, but I think there are elements we can already start to factor in through the course of the cycle that we have. I'm also bearing in mind that, if I recall correctly, the current mandate of the technology mechanism runs to 2027, which would then give us a 2-year head start on that cycle in terms of supporting the continuation of CTCN past that date. And I think this exercise in and of itself is extremely helpful, just to make sure, as we start talking about resource mobilization, that at the end of the day, when we get impact on the ground, that we can not just communicate about it, but we can actually champion the people where this helps and matters the most.
Thank you, Justin. Lydia?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I emphasize the CTCN following up survey with the NDEs who received technical assistance, but I request to send survey to NDEs to enhance the work from their side who didn't make or didn't have the TNA, in order to avoid misunderstanding and encourage them to involve it and solve any technical issue may be raised and they can't understand it very well. For example, it has with me as a NDE of Egypt, because I thought that the request for the TA, it's needed to be signed from the NDA of the GCF and the GEF focal point of my country. But when I asked and follow up from the CTCN Secretariat, I found that the request is needed from my side only, not from the DNA or the GEF focal point. So sometimes the survey maybe highlights some issues that the NDE doesn't aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. And Mohamed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour cette présentation très importante. Je voudrais juste avoir quelques informations sur... J'attends la traduction.
Thank you for this important presentation. I would... Allez-y, Mohamed, et puis je vais traduire.
Donc, je voudrais juste avoir quelques informations sur l'assistance technique demandée par les pays, s'il s'agit des projets concernant les peuples autochtones ou les groupes de femmes et les jeunes. Oui, vous me suivez, hein?
Voilà. I would like to have some information on the technical assistance that are requested by countries, if they include projects on indigenous peoples, women's and youth.
Est-ce qu'il y a un consentement préalable et en connaissance de cause avec les ayants droit, les peuples autochtones, par exemple, quand il s'agit des projets concernant les peuples autochtones? Merci, Monsieur le Président.
My question relates to whether are there any agreements, discussions before projects are implemented or started that deal with issues of indigenous people, with youth. Are these populations consulted when it relates to issues that concern them? Sorry, that was a bit of a stretch on my translation there.
Thank you, Mohammed, and would also thank the interpreter, the translator for that work. I think it has a value addition. Now, next on the list is Maria, followed by Valeria.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. I wanted to echo the comment from Christopher from the European Union and yourself, Fred, that mentioned that technical assistance does have a broader impact on society, and therefore it should be aligned with the current monitoring and evaluation plan and impact statement, which includes a clear space for input on co-benefits of the technical assistance, and this includes youth considerations, women, gender, indigenous peoples, livelihoods. And I can see that the current proposal has removed any reference to co-benefits, so that is the suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Valeria?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rajiv, for the presentation. I agree with my colleague Maria. I agree this survey is also very important for the MNE and to assess the CTCN impact. So I would like to propose the inclusion of a section to know how the technical assistance support gender equality and social co-benefits, and also to remind that this question is in line with the CTCN Gender Action Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I know it's important that we get some response or clarification from the Secretariat, but I wanted to make some observation. One, when the decision called for support from the TEC and the CTCN for the NDEs, that decision, there was another decision also asking the respective countries, that is developing countries, to provide some support to the NDEs. So my colleagues here from developing countries, we have seen that $5,000 may not be enough, but it is a good starting point for the NDEs. So the onus is on you and me also to tell our respective governments also to support the NDEs, emphasizing the role the NDEs are going to play in delivering technologies, climate technologies for adaptation, for mitigation. So we should not only leave the burden to the technology mechanism and the developed countries. We are also the beneficiaries of the actions of the NDEs. So let us also talk to our governments. If possible, as a member of the AB, you go back, find an avenue of reaching the decision makers, the policy makers of your country, the focal points for climate change. Tell them the outcome of COP28 on technology. One decision talks about the support. Then I would also like to observe that at least this is an opportunity to get the visibility of the NDEs from developed countries. How can you explore ways of interfacing with these NDEs in developing countries as they get into effective delivery of services causing impacts And I think this impact will not only raise the visibility of the CTCN, of the technology mechanism, but it is also going to raise the visibility of the UNFCCC process. Because as negotiators, having been there for over 15 years, when you go back home as a member of the national delegation, they ask you for these 15 years, what can you show? So if we invest in the NDEs, NDEs will be one avenue for the UNFCCC to also showcase what their efforts have done to the developing countries. And I think with that, let me ask Rajiv to provide comments, but let's support this cause and let's move forward on it. Rajiv?
Thank you, Vice Chair. This is a very important point which you have raised, and thanks for reminding us all on the role of the national governments in the support of the NDEs. But one point I would like to add, I would also request delegates when they go back to really ask their governments to appoint their NDEs. Because if there is no NDE in the country, we do not have the mandate to pick up conversations or our activities in that country. And that stands both for Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries, because even some of the Annex 1 countries have yet not appointed their NDEs. It means we have board members, but NDEs needs a special request to the UNFCCC Secretariat. I have noted all the points and the good suggestions which are coming out on how we can enhance this monitoring and evaluation template which we have designed. We will include in section 2 on the barrier removal, we will include co-finance, co-benefits including women empowerment and indigenous group impacts. We are not going to go back, go back a lot, but we are going to start this this monitoring our post-TA implementation monitoring for technical assistance which have been completed in 2019, and this aligns with the new program of work, or the second program of work which became effective and operational. So we'll start from 2019. We will do it for every TA. We'll do it for a maximum period of 5 years. And after 5 years, we'll stop hounding the NDEs to provide feedback. Ideally, we would like to have one questionnaire for each technical assistance completed in 5 years. But let's see how the responses from the NDEs are. We would also, if we don't get the kind of response which we are expecting, then maybe we come up with a suggestion that pick up one of the TA which you feel have the maximum impact and provide to begin with. But moving forward, it has to be one questionnaire per technical assistance completed, because we expect all our technical assistance to have impacts. In the interest of time, I'll stop here, but I'm available to have one-to-one conversation with any of the board members who would like to seek further clarification.
How about observers?
And observers.
Okay. Thank you, Rajiv. So there's that offer from Rajiv to have one-on-one with you in case of any clarification or any contribution on that issue. So let me give Rajiv back the microphone so that he can continue, and then after his agenda item discussion, we go for tea, coffee, or water. What? Let the speaker go first. The speaker? Okay. So let me have Erin take over, and then he will guide us on the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. That was an important discussion. It took much longer than what we had scheduled for. So despite the reduced time that we spent on COP28 guidance, we're now right up against the schedule. So we no longer sort of have that extra hour to work with. Our next agenda item is a very important one also. We've had 2 task forces in the past year. One was on prioritization, criteria for technical assistance. The other was on resource mobilization. But what I'm going to ask is to accommodate one of our speakers. So in the afternoon, we have a section on program of work implementation in which we share experience on technical assistance. And one of our speakers traveled to attend the meeting and was scheduled to speak this afternoon, but I understand that there's been a change in which he now has to leave at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to ask that we accommodate him, move our schedule around a little bit, and now go to a presentation of one of the technical assistance projects that's on the schedule for this afternoon. So we're switching around, but it will reduce a little bit of time this afternoon. I just ask that we accommodate the speaker's needs. So if there's no objection, what we'll do now is put aside about 15 minutes for one presentation on technical assistance. Then we'll have the coffee break. And I ask that we keep the coffee break to 15 minutes, and then that will still give us more or less the time that was dedicated for the prioritization criteria. So, seeing no objections, the speaker who was scheduled for this afternoon, who we're now going to hear from now, is Mr. Miguel Trillo from Oiko Logica. He will present a technical assistance project on building and infrastructure system transformation. This technical assistance developed a methodology to create climate-smart municipalities in Togo and the development of action plans. So, if we have the slides ready, then okay. So, Mr. Trillo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for accommodating me for this brief presentation. And thank you also for the invitation to be observer, not only for the presentation. I think it's very useful to have implementing agencies in this kind of discussions. I would like to, while we have the presentation, I would like to say that our team is not present here today. I will speak for an extensive team composed of 3 institutions. Our company, Oiko, worked managing a very large team. But most probably the success of the implementation of this project is due to the selection of the partners. We work with Climate Analytics, which is very well established to conducting research, and fortunately they had a headquarters in Togo, which helped, of course, the implementation. And then we selected a local partner for the collection of the information, UNVERT, also very well established local institution, NGO, who was wonderful at collecting all of the data. You do have to help me with maybe moving forward with the slides, because we have very few time. Yes, these are the institutions helping us. I want to, please go ahead, thank you. I want to actually share with you that this presentation was, well, the project was concluded in 23, and we also had the fortune of presenting this in COP, but COP27 in Egypt. The project was successful, so I will try, since I was kindly invited here, to also bring some maybe comments related to the relevance of the NDAs, for example. So please move on. Yes, the project was requested by the government of Togo and the source of funding, UNDP. I think the source of the request comes from the government, giving a historical problem of lack of decentralization in the project, in the country. This obviously translates the mainstreaming of climate to the municipality into way too many sectors. So that was probably one of the challenges. And the objective of the project was to not only conduct these climate risk assessments in the municipalities, but more to develop the methodology which was universal, so to speak, not universal, obviously, for the purpose of this exercise. No? Please go ahead. As you know, the definition, more the theoretical definition and also the operational definition of climate smart communes come from different sources, but we try to focus not so much on the discussions, conceptual discussions, but more on finding a tool that could be translated into some technological application later. So the challenges of the project were threefold. No? First, developing the methodology, of course, to have an understanding of the local dimensions of risk locally. We had to conduct the vulnerability assessments. We selected 10 urban communes for the exercise. Based on this exercise, we then defined the criteria for the formulation of the model. Thank you. So these presented several problems or challenges. First, the different bioregions in the country, including coastal areas exposed to also different kind of climate risks, kind of guided the team to select a very different nature of climate risks. So it was complex to integrate all of the different risks in one single tool. This is, well, a preliminary diagnosis of the ecoregions, of course, exposing different types of risks. Then, just focusing on the goals of the project, as I mentioned, first was to decide what were the municipalities to be analyzed to account for those criteria. I have to say that this was actually one of the challenges because, of course, we have both criteria that are related to technical matters, as I explained before, and we also were faced with political problems because from the 117 municipalities in Togo, the government kind of favored the selection of some of them before the technical criteria. So this delayed the project a bit, but I think was also a challenge, and we kind of solved the problem by accounting for most of the problems faced by different municipalities in scale and depending on the climate risk. So from the management, operational management of the project, these were the expected outcomes. So conducting the risk, establishing the conceptual framework, and then in order to implement whether the framework was useful, we also conducted or executed or implemented this framework in 4 selected communes to finalize climate, both adaptation and mitigation plans in those 4 communes. And then the last expected outcomes was an awareness campaign to replicate or show the potential replication in the other municipalities. Thank you. So I guess these were the actions. I think I did mention most of them. As a summary, perhaps the challenge, well, the outcomes were very successful in terms of conducting the assessment, the climate risk assessment in those 10 communes. We did develop the conceptual framework. The model was also successfully completed. We managed to develop the operational guidelines to have this as a tool that could be replicated to all of the municipalities. And maybe the shortcoming comes in the last action, the awareness campaign, which was probably what precluded the full replication of the model, one. And secondly, and this is obviously due to the amount of resources, only my comment, it would be extraordinary to have transforming these operational guidelines into a software tool. But obviously it was not the intention of this technical assistance. So I think, yes, we did mention a few conceptual challenges from the approach point of view, but most of the CTCN requirements were taken into account when tailoring and defining the villages. This was the selection methodology, which, as I said, had a few challenges to decide which were the priority communes. On the right hand, I summarized some of the tools we used: multi-criteria analysis, climate risk assessment, also cost-benefit analysis to select some of the sectors, and then finally some negotiation or local policy dialogue with the leaders of the municipalities to understand the priorities in each of them. Yes, we finalized the exercise. Well, the diagnosis with these matrices, which actually were very useful also for the prioritization exercise. I will be happy to share if needed. I don't think we need to go through the details. Yes, then the action plan was evolved based on this preliminary prioritization exercise with some of the priority actions for each municipalities, accounting also for their criteria. And then finally, we also provided some resilience plans, identifying key areas for intervention in different sectors. Yes, this is simply the work plan. I don't think we need to go through this, and this was just a few pictures of the exercise. I think for the sake of the time, and I don't want to take more time from the coffee time, so we can leave it here. Happy to respond to any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can now open the floor to comments and questions regarding this project, and let's keep our eyes on the clock, and let's really break at 11, and we'll have the 15-minute coffee break and then come back. So I saw Halima, and then Christopher, and then Pedro. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, the presenter. This project sounds similar to something that the Ministry of Agriculture in Nigeria is about to do. But that being said, I wanted to draw attention to perhaps need clarification on the seventh title, the project goal, on subsection 3, where you said formulation of an action plan for adaptation and mitigation. I want to know, how does this relate to the mandated UNFCCC national action plans, national adaptation plans, and the NDCs? Is it that you are just going to do a mitigation adaptation plan for those 4 selected communities, or is it in line with the national adaptation plans and the NDCs? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Yes.
I think in the interest of time, I think we should go through if you don't mind, taking notes, hearing all the comments, and then having you respond to all of them. I think that'll be better. So next we have Christopher, Pedro, and then Peter and Renuka, and then that will be it for this topic, and then we'll ask Miguel to do his best to respond to the comments if there's any time at that point. Christopher, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miguel. Really interesting work and really highlights the important role of local authorities in pioneering climate action. And in many countries, the local level is really encouraging us as parties to do even more on climate change and showing what is possible. And that's quite well illustrated, for example, by the CHAMP initiative that was launched in Dubai. I have some questions mostly related to the longevity of the project. I mean, because the resources to have people, the challenge of resources to have people working on climate change is a problem for all parties, but it's an even greater challenge for cities. That even in Annex 1 countries in Europe, in some cities, you will maybe have one person in a municipality that is working part-time on climate change, and even more difficult in developing countries. So you mentioned, for example, the Eco Villages project, and my question, like, what other actions did you take to connect your project to other urban climate initiatives? For example, the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is the world's largest urban climate initiative. They already have a methodology for developing local climate action plans that has been developed by cities for cities. And they already have 84 member cities in Togo that are part of this initiative. So how will you link your work to this already existing initiative in Togo and all other countries? Because from our side, from the European Union, one of the main problems that we see is it's easy to develop a climate action plan in a city. The most difficult part is what happens next. How do you make sure that the local government is then going to implement the plan? How are they going to get the funds, including from the government of Togo? Many cities are not allowed to borrow money, so they need to get the funds from other sources. So yeah, like how are you going to link these local action plans to the actual implementation, which is really what the cities need? Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Pedro, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Miguel, for this presentation. Really interesting. But there is always a concern with these kind of things is how much sustainable are they in time? So my questions are, do you have any indicator that could at least show how probable is that transformation to be maintained in time? Are you going to do any kind of follow-up? And how do these changes integrate with the rest of the system? I mean, how sustainable can be a climate smart commune within a city that is not following the same principles? Thanks.
Thank you, Pedro. And now the final speakers, Peter and then Ranuca. And if I can ask you to keep your comments or questions very, very brief, because we're almost out of time. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is the first time I take the floor. So I'm Peter Oxen from World Intellectual Property Organization. So the question is really simple. I noticed that in the introduction to this technical assistance case there was mentioning technology transfer and aiding getting technologies also out there. So I was wondering whether we've been discussing the tool of the database of the White for Green, whether such a tool could be useful for a TIA like yours for identifying technologies, or how you would normally in these kind of projects go about in identifying examples of technologies that could then be integrated in the planning later on, at least as directions for what would be possible technologically as solutions there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Now, Ranuca, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, my question actually has been, like plenty of questions has been raised by all others, previous speakers, and it's along those lines that how, what is the magic formula you identified through these all projects that which can be easy and explainable or scalable at different location and in different contexts. So what are the finance inventory, indicator inventory, or what is the, resources inventory indicators and so on. So like if we can identify those indicators, then that would be people can match them and scale their projects at different levels and in different contexts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranuca. Now, Miguel, you literally just have a few minutes to respond, if you don't mind. And I'm sure Miguel can make himself available, not in person, but by email or phone to follow up for anybody who's interested in staying in touch. Do we have your email on the slides, or maybe just make that easy for people to know how to stay in touch with you? But if you want to try to respond to some of these comments briefly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, right there. I think my email is right there. So now on the screen. Thank you very much. Yes, actually, I'm very happy to respond if I can, and I will share some of my views, but probably not always the best response. I have, regarding the alignment with the NDCs, this is, I just want to anticipate, because I think the other questions are also in the same line, that this assignment was especially challenging because we had this kind of two-sided components. On one hand, we had to develop the methodology to standardize the procedure to allow for other municipalities to conduct the exercise. And on the other, we also had to, of course, go ahead and conduct the climate risk assessments. Obviously, those are two very different goals. The focus, and I think the terms of reference were very well drafted for this purpose, were just to have a methodology which could be accounting for the problems of different regions. This is very complicated, first to align with the NDCs, because this is policy dialogue, and we didn't probably have all of the needed resources. We did have some, of course, exchange with the government officials and some other donors as well, but not full alignment. No? So yes, we did take into account the ongoing NDAs. The government was not necessarily full, they did not have full ownership, but yes, we tried to take into account the priorities, even though they were not very well articulated at the local level. So we did consider the NDCs for that purpose, but it's the way we conducted the exercise was more thinking on formulating or building a tool that would allow municipalities to make their own decisions and aligning their policies, or more than policies, more the strategic municipal documents using this tool. No? This is more the way we try to complete the assignment. And regarding, and also related to the question, is Christopher mentioned the extension. I think the extension of the project and the alignment with other interventions from other donor partners. Yes, this is probably our experience as implementing local agencies. We have actually understand the role of the NDAs is crucial, and I would add to the discussion before that it's always, I think, very useful to understand not only resources to support the project locally, but also to find ways to align with other donors for the sustainability of the action in the long term, given that some other donors have resources for implementing these activities. For example, the covenant measures by the EU, not only, but in terms of finance, we can also think, or we did try to link with the UNCDF, through local, which has also climate resources for financing with these kind of projects with municipalities. So yes, I encourage alignment, and the EU also actually was also conducting implementing one support program on municipal strengthening. So yes, this is I think a requirement for sustainability. Just also briefly responding to Pedro, sustainability of the action probably is first. And here I want to bring another very good example from CTCN, who conducted all 6 years ago, a very similar exercise in Costa Rica, where they did develop a full exercise of mainstreaming climate through the municipal planning instruments, and a extraordinary operational manual was created, but then the exercise stopped there. We could not fully build the technological tool to replicate this in the different municipalities. And then I think I did respond to most of the questions for today. So I closed it here, and do please contact me if you have more specific questions, or I can share you not only the presentation, but the project documents. Thank you, that are available for discussion. Thank you very much to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Miguel. We appreciate your engagement with the CTCN and your joining us for this thoughtful discussion of your work. I want to stick to coming back at 11:15, so we now have a 10-minute break, but since coffee and food is permitted in the room, it seems like it would be okay for you to bring your drinks to the table if you're not finished eating or drinking when we start. So please, we can take a break now, but I'd like to really get us started, continuing the meeting at 11:15, when we will discuss prioritization criteria for technical assistance. Thank you.
I request that we get started, please. You can come with your coffee, I think. Colleagues, Halima, this is. Colleagues, we are starting. Please, let's take our seats.
I didn't even want to go to the SBs, and I don't. I can tell them.
Colleagues, you are running late and you would like to start.
Yeah, you can say that. Yes, sir.
Our next discussion is on agenda item 21, and it's about the outcomes from the task force on prioritization criteria for technical assistance. The dedicated task force on this matter virtually met 3 times since January this year. We will hear from the Citizen Secretariat on some of the conclusions and the agreements we have reached. Please, Rajiv, take the floor.
See if it works. Just the green one.
Welcome back. This is a very important agenda item on prioritization criteria for technical assistance. This is a long-standing agenda item which was there in the previous advisory board meeting, which was in Bonn, and it was also there in the advisory board meeting which was held in Songdo, where the Secretariat made a presentation, on what criteria could be adopted, how it can be revised. the board had asked us to create a task force. The task force met a couple of times before the last AB in Bonn. It was discussed in the Bonn advisory board meeting. Subsequently, we had three task force meetings. So there are a number of iterations. So at the outset, my apologies if I had missed something or if the Secretariat has missed something. But I would like to reassure all the board members that we have taken into considerations all the practical aspects, including the working of the Secretariat to be incorporated in this prioritization criteria. But still, we are in the hands of these advisory board members and the advisory board, and we are happy to incorporate any more suggestions which can come out of the advisory board or any revisions to that. Just to put a perspective, there have been some suggestions from the board members to include a preamble to the prioritization criteria, and this preamble, we made a preamble with regards to the eligibility criteria or the eligibility principles which were earlier there. That has all been captured into the preamble, because in the preamble we also mentioned that this is the overall framework, or the preamble is the overall framework which determines the eligibility of the technical assistance to be delivered, but how it needs to be prioritized is the question. And these are the COP mandates which are coming out. These are the COP mandates which provides the basis on which the CTC, we are developing this prioritization criteria. Because if you see, COP17 decided that CTCN will manage the process of receiving and responding to a request from developing countries. And the Annex 7 also indicated that CTCN Advisory Board will provide guidance and approve the prioritization criteria for responding to requests from developing countries. And this is very explicit in the COP decision. What we take out from this COP decision is that the question of eligibility of a request is within the mandate to the CTCN, and which has been captured in the preamble. And therefore, we eliminated the eligibility aspect of it because it is already, it has been captured in the preamble, and it follows all the COP guidance which we have received so far, and we developed the prioritization criteria. Next slide, please. The task force between the last advisory board meeting in Bonn and the current one, that is between the 22nd and 23rd board meeting, the task force met 3 times, and there were multiple iterations and discussions which happened during these 3 task forces till the final task force which was held just last month. Next slide, please. If you look at the old criterias, and specifically the eligibility, what is said to be an eligibility criteria, which was approved by the advisory board 5th meeting, or which was approved during the 5th meeting of the advisory board, some of the important aspects is that it should have a clear positive, means it should have a clear positive climate impact. The request should be aligned with national strategies, plans, etc. And the issue of endogenous capacities and the capacity in the country to monitor the impacts of the CTC and technical assistance. Now, what we have done is, and these are all coming from, since these are all coming from the COP decisions, so we have tried to merge them and put them in the preamble of the document which was circulated to you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Well, I'm just summarizing the key points before jumping into what are the criteria. And the key points discussed was the request is aligned to the CTC and existing program of work. We are already following that. There are views by some parties that we should name the 5 system transformation areas and 2 enablers. And a clarification to that is we have not included the names because the CTCN program of work has already mentioned about these 5+2 areas. And this is the Secretariat's thinking that if we keep the program of work, so in future, if after 2 years or 3 years there is a revision in the program of work, then the criteria would still hold valid and we can continue our activities. But it is up to the parties to decide. The request is aligned to the key themes of technology framework under Article 10, Para 4 of the Paris Agreement. The task force suggested to aligning the request with principles and key themes, which could also encompass several other criteria related to gender, indigenous people, because if you look at the technology framework under Article 10, Para 4, it has all these elements. So there is no need of developing a criteria or repetition of a criteria within the prioritization. The request is submitted particularly by LDCs and SIDS. Again, means even in the earlier discussion, we would like to focus on LDCs and SIDS, and if there are two equal requests, equal competing requests, the priority would be given to LDCs and SIDS. And the task force clarified that all the developing countries are eligible to submit requests, while the prioritization would give additional consideration for LDCs and SIDS. And this follows the point which I just mentioned, that prioritization of LDCs and SIDS does not mean that the other developing countries cannot put up a request for technical assistance. The request contributes to a balance of adaptation and mitigation technical assistance project. The task force deferred this decision to this board. The request demonstrates project readiness and has the potential for replication or scaling up nationally, regionally, or internationally. Again, the task force suggested deferring the decision for further consideration of this board. The request is part of multi-country approach to allow regional bundling of the request to promote collaboration among stakeholders, including between the countries. Again, the task force deferred this decision to this board meeting. The request developed in consultation with or engagement with various national climate-related focal points, like the NDAs, GCF focal points, ozone focal points, adaptation fund focal points. And this criteria emerges from integration of engagement with various national climate focal points and leveraging private financing institutions, which is part of the criteria. Next slide, please. So, based on the discussions in the task force, the Secretariat, with the help and support of the task force, were able to identify 7 prioritization criteria. Out of the 7 prioritization criteria, the 2 criteria, namely the request is aligned to the existing program of work of the CTCN, and the request is aligned to the themes of the technology framework under Article 10, Paragraph 4 of Paris Agreement, should be complied with. So if there is any technical assistance request to the CTCN which do not comply with these 2, we are not going to consider it. So this is, and if you recall, the 5 themes are on innovation, on support, on implementation, on stakeholder engagement, creating enabling environment, so forth and so on. So there are 5 themes. And this is a COP guidance. This cannot be, this is a COP guidance, and the Secretariat is following that guidance. And therefore, these are the 2, means if the request comes and these are complying with these 2, it has to comply with these 2. Next slide, please. There are 5 other criteria. That is, request is submitted particularly by LDCs or SID. the request contributes to a balance of adaptation and mitigation technical assistance project, which the task force has deferred to this board. Request demonstrates project readiness and has the potential of replicating and scaling up. This is important also because to show the impacts of the CTCN. The request is part of multi-country approach to allow regional bundling of requests to promote collaborations among stakeholders. This is also from the point of view, we do not have infinite resources, human or financial resources, and therefore it makes there's a lot of value if we are able to combine various technical assistance requests to have a kind of larger impact with a small, means it's value for money, just value for money. And number 7 is request is developed in consultations and engagement of various national climate related focal points, enables leveraging public or private finance. This again is from the point of view of, making efforts to scale it up and also increase interaction between the various focal points in the countries, including the between the NDEs, NDAs, Adaptation Fund focal point, Ozone focal point, NDC partnership focal points. There are something like 8 or 10 of them. And if we see that the request is developed in combination with them, the task force felt that it has the potential of being scaled up and adopted. So the task force and the secretariat, we came not a conclusion, but we compiled this thing up as a secretariat that out of the 7 prioritization criteria, the first 2 criteria are compulsory to be complied with, and out of 5, the technical assistance requests submitted to the CTCN should demonstrate or show that it is complying with any 3 of the 5. And once that is demonstrated and shown, that request for technical assistance would be prioritized for further implementation and action by the CTCN secretariat. I would stop here, and from the secretariat side, and I request the chair for further discussion on this.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv, for your presentation. And now I would like members to hear your views on this very critical and important subject, because CTCN is always overwhelmed with the requests for technical assistance. How do we guide CTCN effectively to address this? How do they prioritize? When you're faced with so many, there's need for prioritization. And that's what CTCN is talking about here. How do we help them to prioritize this technical assistance? So you've had the proposals from the task force, and it's now upon us here in the room to fine-tune these criteria, which will be applied and used by the CTCN in prioritizing whatever requests that they are going to receive. Thank you. It is open, and I don't know who's first, but okay. Thank you. I have Alima, Pedro, and Maria first, then we shall follow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was privileged to be in the task force. However, I'm just going to say the reflections of what we agreed at the constituency meeting at the first day of this meeting. We did agree that we don't mind the collapse of the eligibility and prioritization criteria. And it's been said here before, and I guess some of you would also say it again, the issue of the geographical balance should be reflected somehow. And we should also reflect gender, young people, and vulnerable. Perhaps there may be a need to if it can't go all together, just like Rajiv said, he did give references to it, maybe list it further down as reference, as some others have been listed in the document that was provided to us, list it down as a reference so that people who are reading it would follow. We can't expect just CTCN or tech-related people to be reading that document. So if we do expand at the bottom of the page somewhere that program of work themes are so and so, which includes what you've said, what I'm also saying here, the gender part of it, it would be helpful, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You are Lima. Next is Pedro.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I think it's not that we don't have infinite resources, it's that we don't have enough resources. Because if we had enough resources, we wouldn't need prioritization criteria. I think it's good to have this in mind, because this is actually our aim is eventually not to need prioritization criteria. Regarding the eligibility criteria, I'm not sure I understood what you said. I mean, if they are included in the preamble, maybe we don't need to have these eligibility criteria. I think that the whole point of have a section that is called eligibility criteria is a problem, because this is a demand and driven and country-driven process. So of course the process should be focused on technology action, which is mitigation, adaptation, and addressing of climate loss and damage. But apart from that, all projects should be in principle eligible. In terms of what is here defined as eligibility criteria, one small point, maybe not that small, when it says the request enhances endogenous capacity, there is a footnote. And the footnote clarifies that it only refers to technology transfer. But that's not true. I mean, to enhance endogenous capacity, you have capacity building, you have technology transfer, and you also have supporting endogenous technologies. So I think this should either be deleted or expanded. Then, in relation to this prioritization criteria, well, there is one point, it says in the second one, it says that the request is aligned with the key themes of the technology framework under Article 10, paragraph 4. But that's not, in the Article 10, I mean, the Paris Agreement, there are no themes for the technology framework. That was a decision taken later on. It only mentions and defines the technology framework. But that's not the main point. Actually, one of my main concerns is that if we're going to change our rules, we have to do it in a progressive way, not in a regressive way, particularly in terms of fairness and equity. And there were three principles before, which were the balancing criteria that Halima mentioned before. I fully support Halima's intervention, which was really important because it said that if I have a country that hasn't received the same amount of support of other countries, it should be prioritized. And that's very important because otherwise we could concentrate support in the countries that are better in making proposals or have better infrastructure to make them, feasible or whatever. So it's important to give priority to countries that contribute to regional, interregional balance. Okay, that's one of them. The other ones is there were criteria about gender balance, about participation of youth, about vulnerable groups in general. Why are they here? I mean, all these criteria should be here. Otherwise, this document is worse than the one that is actually in place. I repeat, it's geographical balance, gender equity, youth participation, and consideration of vulnerable groups. And the last point is that I don't think that one particular criteria should be given more importance than the rest. Because the plan of work, our program of work, shouldn't be a straitjacket for countries. It should be a document that facilitates countries to participate. So there are facilities, there are emphasis in these key themes, but if they want to explore another theme, they have the right to do it, because this is a country-driven process. So my suggestion is that all criteria are quite the same. You are just scored by the number of criteria that you are complying with. Well, there will be the number of yes in this table. And basically, the one that has more criteria is on top, and the others follow up. And one more thing. Regarding the things for the technology framework, there is another conceptual thing. These themes are for the framework, not for the projects or the requests. For example, one of the themes is support. What does it mean that a project is aligned with support? A project is looking for support. So I don't think that you can apply the themes from the technology framework to the actual request. Thanks.
Thank you, Pedro. Next on the list is Justin.
Thanks, Fred. I think Pedro has just said something very important, which is how do we utilize, we want to call them eligibility criteria, prioritization criteria, to get us where we want to be, which is that we don't have to have them in the first place. So I think anything that can drive us in that direction is welcome. There's always this balance about being, the perfect is being the enemy of the good. I'm just wondering, also just building on Halima's point, my eyes have been drawn to number 6 in particular. And I'm just wondering if we couldn't maybe shift the emphasis on some of these points. So, for example, if we actually started 6 with talking about promoting collaboration among stakeholders, including vulnerable groups, gender, youth, etc., because I would sort of then suggest that potentially doing it that way around, we can then bring in this idea of regional bundling or multi-country approaches afterwards. Again, huge credit to the CTCN Secretariat for rebuilding the website. I think, and Peter said it many times in terms of WIPO Green, I think this could then enable us to actually consider the requests as part of a matchmaking exercise further on down the line. But I do think maybe thinking collaboration first, a multi-country approach is maybe second, might help us. Potentially also under 3, we might be able to incorporate some of the points that Pedro has just mentioned. But I do think, as I said, simplicity, we're not where we want to be, but I think we all want to find a way of getting there.
Thank you, Justin. Next on my list is Mohammed.
Please, je voudrais laisser la parole d'abord à Maria.
Thank you.
Avant moi. Okay?
That's fine, I guess. He would prefer to give the voice to Maria first before he speaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Chair. We want to build on the intervention of Pedro and Halima. So the youth constituency wants to highlight that the 2015 prioritization criteria is still in effect, includes criteria number 6, which focus on the promotion of gender equality, youth empowerment, although missing explicit reference to indigenous people or local communities. In contrast, the criteria proposed at AB 22 offered a more comprehensive approach with considerations for gender and women's rights, youth engagement and empowerment, as well as the positive impact of the development of livelihoods for indigenous peoples and local communities. In the light of the existing prioritization criteria and the AB 22 proposal, the proposal under discussion today seems regressive in terms of inclusion and intersectionality. So we want to express our concern that criterion number 6, which referred to youth gender considerations, has been completely removed and notes the absence of youth considerations throughout the new proposed document, and this includes the preamble. This concern extends to the lack of indigenous peoples' consideration under this new proposal as well. And so we request the AB members to evaluate maintaining or enhancing the prioritization criteria of 2015 instead of going backwards and removing existing criteria that integrates intersectionality, which ultimately ensures a people-centered approach and takes into account the CTCN Program of Work 2023-2027 and the updated Gender Policy and Action Plan. Lastly, it's our understanding that the prioritization criteria should not be seen as an exhaustive list, but rather as a good tool that helps give further consideration to the broader potential impacts and co-benefits of the technical assistance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, the representative from Hugo Maria. And I think you've emphasized a very important point. I think we all know the demographic dividend of utilizing the youth. I think it is very important that they are considered. The issue of gender, I think there's no way you go and people are not talking about the gender equity and gender balance I think these are, and then of course the issue of indigenous people may also come here, and I think the Secretariat may consider how to incorporate that in the prioritization. So next is Mohamed, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Donc, je voudrais d'abord féliciter la secrétariat de ce travail et je supporte l'intervention de Pedro, Halima et Maria. Je voudrais la traduction.
So I would like to congratulate the Secretariat for the work and the intervention that they have done, and I would like to raise my alignment with what has been said by Pedro and Maria.
Et je voudrais juste proposer une proposition. Je pense le point 2. Est-ce qu'on peut voir le point 2?
I would like to suggest something on the point 2. Can we please see the point 2? Thank
Le
you.
point 2, est-ce qu'on peut ajouter au point 2 l'article 7, paragraphe 5 de l'accord de Paris?
Would it be possible to add to point 2 a reference to the Article 7, paragraph 5?
Est-ce que vous voulez que je lis l'article 7?
Do you like to read the Article 7 in the respective point, paragraph?
OK. Donc, l'article 7, paragraphe 5, les parties reconnaissent que l'action pour l'adaptation devrait suivre une démarche impulsée par les pays. OK?
So the respective article says that the party recognize that action for adaptation should follow. Could you please say again, Mohamed, what is the end of the article, please?
Je répète. Les parties reconnaissent que l'action pour l'adaptation devrait suivre une démarche impulsée par les pays.
Should follow a country-driven approach.
Sensible à l'égalité des sexes.
According to gender approach.
Participative.
Participative.
Et totalement transparente.
Et fully transparent.
Prenant en considération les groupes, comme l'a été dit.
Considering the groups, as we
les communautés.
Communities.
Les écosystèmes vulnérables.
Vulnerable ecosystems.
Et devrait tenir compte.
And should include.
Et s'inspirer des meilleures données scientifiques disponibles.
And use scientific data.
Selon qu'il convient.
According if it's relevant or not.
Des connaissances traditionnelles.
Considering the traditional knowledge.
Du savoir des peuples autochtones.
The knowledge of autochthone people.
Et des systèmes de connaissances locaux.
And the systems of local knowledge.
En vue d'intégrer l'adaptation dans les politiques et les mesures socio-économiques et environnementales pertinentes s'il y a lieu.
In the political and social politics, if relevant.
Point de citation.
This is the Article 7, paragraph 5.
C'est l'article 7 et paragraphe 5 de l'accord de Paris. Merci
Article
beaucoup.
7, paragraph 5 of Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed, and I think those are points noted. Next is Christopher.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's really a good idea that we're revising the criteria now as we have a new program of work, very timely exercise, and important to note that this document, once adopted, will replace the old criteria. And so really hope that we can approve it at today's meeting, because we have now been discussing it for several meetings in a row. I think adopting this will really help the NDEs in their work to propose requests to the Secretariat that contribute to our program of work. Very much supporting the comments made by Halima and Pedro on the need for regional and interregional balance, and also support the comments, for example, made by Maria, Pedro, and Halima on the importance to reflect youth and gender considerations. However, I think considering what we have already incorporated in the gender strategy and how projects should contribute to the gender strategy, maybe we don't need to have a specific criteria on that, but rather make reference to what we have already agreed through the gender strategy. Replying to some comments that has also been raised by several colleagues, I think it's very important that we keep the reference and criteria to the program of work. The program of work has been developed and agreed by us. I think it's one of the strongest documents that we have to show to our stakeholders, including to the NDEs, what it is that we are working on, and not referencing the program of work in the prioritization criteria would mean that we don't have faith in our own program of work. And I think we don't reject requests because they don't fit in the program of work. Yesterday, Rajiv mentioned that the Secretariat does not reject requests, but they rather than have a dialogue with the NDEs to see how to enhance and revise requests so that it fits with the work that CTCN does. So the Secretariat does not reject requests. Some more specific comments, for example, on one of the pages, the last paragraph is, additionally, it would check for components that promote the use of specific or proprietary hardware or software tools, as well as elements that could be deemed as use of CTCN resources, etc. I don't really understand what this sentence means, so either if the Secretariat could explain what is meant by that paragraph, or otherwise that it is removed. Secondly, for the prioritization criteria number 3, I think it's maybe a little bit poorly worded. If you can switch to the next page maybe. I would suggest that it's reworded, is the request submitted by an LDC or SIDS? And finally, for criteria 5, I would also suggest that we make a reference to that, is the project or the request contributing to a systemic transformation? Because I think this is really reflecting the request by a lot of non-Annex 1 countries here today, that we want to stop seeing small pilot projects. We want to see things that enable a systemic transformation in the country. So suggest to include that reference. And I think with these minor revisions, I think we suggest that we adopt the criteria today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. Next is Sigrid.
Thank you very much. Echoing my colleague from the Commission, I really want to emphasize the importance of us being constructive, and I think finishing these criteria before the end of this meeting. We have discussed them for so long. I think it would be valuable for the Secretariat to be able to have new criteria to work with as soon as possible. I wanted to ask about footnote number 6, which is, it's a footnote that sits on number 3 of the prioritization criteria. And it says all developing countries are eligible to submit their country's request, yet for the balancing criteria, the Secretariat will give preference to the request received from the LDCs and SIDS. The balancing criteria referred to here, does this refer then to the, could we have a clarification which balancing criteria this is? Thank you.
Thank you, Sigrid. And next is Valeria.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to echo what Halima, Pedro, and Maria said before regarding gender. I understand the importance of reaching an agreement on the prioritization criteria, but it shouldn't be at the cost of advancing gender-responsive technologies that also can have co-benefits for youth and indigenous people. Although the CTCN has demonstrated ability to integrate some strong gender analysis in TAs and TNAs that have been presented to the board, we are missing support for climate technologies that will put gender equality at the core, recognizing that in certain sectors like agriculture, water management, or transport, it could have a transformative climate and social impact. So, dear CTCN AB colleagues, the tech mechanism and the fifth program of work were adopted with the mandate of implementing and deploying gender-inclusive climate technologies, including indigenous and indigenous technologies. Therefore, I would like to propose to keep an eligibility and prioritization criteria that ensures that the TAs include gender considerations and analysis of how it empowers women, youth, and indigenous communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Next on the list is Chiro.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. I agree with other colleagues in that we should approve this prioritization criteria in this AB meeting. And I have, like Christopher, I was also concerned about the last sentence of a preamble, which says it would check for components that promote the use of specific or proprietary hardware and software too, and as well as elements that could be deemed as use of CTC resources as supplementary funding of large-scale hardware installation. I think I can understand the concern behind this sentence, but I think this should be considered case-by-case basis, because in some cases, when CTCN is try to collaborate with some private stakeholders, and it maybe it leads to using specific software or product of that partner company. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if it serves for both the causes of CTCN, objective of CTCN, and also a recipient country. So I think this should be considered by case-by-case basis. And if the concern is about CTCN resources used for only purely serving as some business interests of companies, that should be dealt with by a different process, like due diligence of projects, etc. So my suggestion is to remove this sentence, and this should be addressed by a different process. And I heard that there are a suggestion of including a geographical balance. I not necessarily object to balancing geographical, taking a geographical balance, but what's tricky is about different people have different perception about what's a good geographical balance. So unless we have some common idea about what is a good geographical balance, such criteria does not serve very well. And another problem of geographical balance is that within the same geographical area, some country may have received many assistance from CTCN, but some other country in the same geographical area has not received any support. Then if the balance is made just geographically, the country that have never received assistance from CTCN, but the region is received a lot of support from CTCN, then this country has received some disadvantage in prioritization. So my alternative suggestion is that we include criteria that if the request is submitted from country that have never received CTCN support, then the request is prioritized. So instead of saying geographical balance, which is a bit ambiguous, I should go for country by country basis. Yeah. And the similar concern goes to the mitigation and adaptation balance. So again, I think people have different view on what's the good balance between mitigation and adaptation. So I don't object to including this, but if we include this, we should make it explicit what's the target balance between mitigation and adaptation. Whether we should aim for 50%, 50% between mitigation and adaptation, excluding those serving for both cross-cutting, mitigation and adaptation cross-cutting, or whatever, but we need some agreement on what's the mitigation and adaptation balance. Yeah, that's all, thank you.
Ichiro, and next on the list is Bertrand.
Yeah, many thanks. From the perspective of the overall technology mechanism, I would also like to add or to emphasize what also other colleagues said, that we add also the aspect of transformational change. So when I was looking at the criteria, so I think it's good that we have the reference to Article 10.4 already as a guiding principle or as a criteria. But I would maybe, if we can add also transformational change here, also maybe make reference to the GST, which clearly outlines that we have to go away from fossil fuels and other aspects. So I would also make reference to advancements to the GST. We have already surpassed globally or about to surpass 1.5 degrees. So I think it's more urgent than ever. And basically, we have to reflect that basically in all the requests that we basically go away from fossil fuels and tripling of renewables and all these other aspects which are mentioned in the GST. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertrand. Stephen?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have a query about the preamble. Paragraph number 5 of the preamble begins, considering the CTCN Secretariat has in place the eligibility criteria with an imperative that any technical assistance must align with all the outlined principles to be deemed eligible, and then a list follows. As the advisory board does not have a role in setting eligibility criteria, I wonder if we could streamline this language by simply writing, considering that any technical assistance request must align with all the outlined principles to be deemed eligible, and then the principles continue, just to make it clear that we're referencing a document, but we're not setting any eligibility rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, and Kati.
Thank you very much. So I won't repeat what's already said by Pedro Halima. One thing, actually what Japan said, I wanted to propose that, and I think it's really important to give the priority to the countries that has not received any kind of assistance before, or maybe has not received in the past 5 years or something like that. So I think that we can agree on what should be the duration like, but I think it's really important because I think this is a very clear that they should be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Kati. And last on the list is Annie.
Thank you very much. I want to support what my European Commission colleague has noted, as well as Japan and Sweden. It's important to anchor the existing program of work and making the language around the proposed criteria 3 a little bit crisper and getting rid of the word particularly, which adds confusion. In number 5 proposed, the terminology scaling up seems to be a little bit désuet from the past, and perhaps noting someone else said system transformation would be beneficial. Getting rid of the elusive balancing criteria language, which again Sigrid noted was a bit confusing, to maybe not note that. And very much agree with Ichiro about and others who've noted the suggestion to get rid of that strange sentence around hardware and software tools, as this raises more questions than it provides answers. And finally, my most important intervention would be to that I'm in favor of including note that projects must obviously consider and include due consideration for women and gender, indigenous and youth constituencies and other, vulnerable communities. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, members, for your contribution. And I hope it's going to enrich the document and make it applicable for the CTCN when they are prioritizing. But let's hear the response and some comments from Rajiv.
Means the Secretariat at this point of time can only provide clarifications on the introduction of some sentences in point number 2. That is, additionally, it would check for components that promote the use of specific or proprietary hardware or software tools, as well as elements that could be deemed as use of CTCN resources as supplementary funding for large-scale hardware installations. And we had reasons for it, and it was based on the experience which we have from some of the requests which were made to the CTCN Secretariat, wherein they were trying to even identify the make and the model of the technology they want. And when the CTC and that make and model exists, and I'll give you an example. If you are looking at energy efficient pumps or energy efficient motors, the country should not be requesting that they want pumps made by XYZ company. Means they can ask for energy efficient pumps, and it's the role of the CTCN Secretariat to provide them with a list of what are the energy efficient pumps, rather than trying to promote a specific brand or a specific tool. This has also happened, even in the case of softwares, which where in country says, oh, this particular donor has given us this, and now we want an extension of our work in different regions, and we need to use the same software. Means the Secretariat is of the opinion that we risk using the neutrality if we adhere to this kind of an approach, and as Ichiro said, means it's definitely on a case to means we. It would be applied on a case-to-case basis, but also we wanted to have a language within the criteria which kind of dissuades the countries to put up this kind of a request, or if they put up this request, we are able to provide a more affirmative reply. It was from that. This is the Secretariat's perspective. But if the parties feel that we can delete it, means we have no objections to it. But it then exposes the Secretariat to sometimes unreasonable demands, which come along the way, and it is not targeting any particular company or a group. But it is in general to dissuade parties and countries and to create a kind of a I would say a kind of a very targeted. We in the Secretariat are also aware that it could lead to unethical practices. That's one point. The second point also is sometimes we get requests wherein we could establish a very clear link wherein the parties are asking for no, only hardware installation. So, which if you look at the, which we as a secretariat feel that it's good if they are asking for hardware installation, but then such kind of requests should go wherein the technology is already proven, they have already demonstrated it. It needs to go towards the financing mechanism for scaling up efforts rather than coming to the CTCN for small resources to manage it, and that's the reason the last line says resources as supplementary funding for large-scale hardware installations. And these are live cases, means which the CTCN keeps on receiving, and sometimes it's difficult to reply, or it's difficult for the countries to take no for an answer. Means rest of the points which are raised on the prioritization criteria, I leave it to the parties on how they want the secretariat to address and I also apologize for some of the oversight. There have been so number of iteration, like suddenly appearing the word appearing balancing criteria in point 6 was not meant to be there. We can even revise the criteria 3, which is the request is submitted by LDCs or SIDS or countries which have yet not received support from the CTCN. That would address some of the points. And Article 10 of Paris Agreement, it provides details of what has to be done. Means it is not just support. In support, it says what we have to do for support. We have to link it with the financing mechanism. We have to support countries in developing proposal. That is already listed there in the technology framework under support. Under implementation, there are a number of points which needs to be addressed. And to the COP, till now we have to report against the technology framework because that's what the COP decision is. That's what we have to report on, and that forms an essential part of the whole work of the CTCN. Please recall that when the prioritization criteria was approved earlier, it was before the Paris Agreement. There was no discussion on a technology framework, but after that the parties decided to come up with technology framework which provided a clear guidance of what the technology mechanism should be doing. And therefore, if we are not including that, and that technology framework has all the references of gender, indigenous people, endogenous capacities. Under implementation and stakeholder engagement, it has a very clear guidelines and directives of what the actions and the activities should be with regards to capacity building. So if we are covering technology framework, as a secretariat, we feel that we are covering multiple issues in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. I know what the Secretariat is going through, and I know the challenges we faced when discussing this subject. It has not been very easy, and it is a work in progress. Having heard from the colleagues here, members of the advisory board, I know more tasks still lie ahead, and we have to work on this document and make it appropriate, and this will call for more work for the task force, but we would also request that the Secretariat incorporates the comments from here, and where it has not been possible to incorporate the comments, at least some footnote rationale for not including it should be reflected, because members will still raise in the next meeting issues which they feel is of their concern if it is not included in the document. So there should be a very clear reason for not including them. And if they are already catered for somewhere else, it is also important to explain. But before we close this agenda, I note that Christopher, I think, has some additional information. Thank you. Christopher.
You know, just to thank Rajiv for the explanation. I think it makes sense, and the text can keep us and can stay as it is. I think a really good solution for NDEs can be to simply ask for the best available technologies, or to make reference to an ambitious environmental standards, and that they want technologies that are in line with these ambitious standards, and then it's up to the Secretariat to define what that should be. So happy with the text as it stands. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. And with those comments, I wish to guide that the Secretariat will try to capture the inputs from the advisory board here in this meeting, improve on the document, and the document will now have another draft which will now be given to the task force to continue deliberating on it. I don't know how many task force meetings will be there, but I would like to pray that maybe by the time we come to the next meeting in September, the task force will have done this its due diligence, and we conclude on this criteria, because we need it, and it will help the citizen Colleagues, we're just beginning because I see a lot of, I think we are forfeiting our lunch. Not because we want, but I think because the subject matter is very important. But let's make sure that we take on the people who want to say something, and then we go for our lunch. We have only 2 minutes to lunch, and maybe we can borrow some 5 minutes, and so we have 7 minutes to lunch. And allow me, therefore, to, I don't know whether this will be the right list, but I saw Annie very early. She wanted to say something. And then from Annie, we shall go to Ketevan. And then just Annie?
I believe we're really quite close. I don't think there's a lot of disagreement around the room. I think there's agreement with what people have said. And so I would suggest that perhaps the Secretariat reflect what it has heard from us board members into an amended version that we look at together tomorrow, and that we close this. We've been talking about it for a long time, and I would urge everyone, including the Secretariat, to try very much to arrive at a new set of criteria before we leave Copenhagen. We're very close. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for listening to what we're discussing here among ourselves. Yeah, I think we're also talking about a similar thing, and we are in agreement that we have to conclude discussion on this document here before we go, but let's see how we progress. We are in your hands, and also the Secretariat, we depend on them if they can do the due diligence on this document based on the contribution from here. We shall be very happy. Next on the list is Kurt.
Maybe you listened to us when we were discussing here. Yeah, so because I just want to echo Annie and won't take much of your time.
Thank you. And next is Justin.
Thank you, Fred. I'm just going to echo Ketevan and also Annie. I really don't think we're that far apart. I think it would be an absolute travesty not to walk out of here with this document finished. I think it is so important. It is the document that then complements the resource mobilization strategy. And Maria and I think we've just had a conversation. We're not talking past each other at all. We're talking together. I really think we can get this done. I think it's just a question of formulating maybe 4 or 5 elements of this document. I can really feel we're fingertip close. Let's get it done.
Thank you. I see the consensus, but let's hear from Stephen.
Thank you, sir. I have the same proposal for the Secretariat to come back by tomorrow morning at the latest. We are supposed to approve this document at this meeting. That's our task here. It would be very useful for the Secretariat and also NDEs to have the updated criteria in place after 10 years now. And I think there's a very high level of agreement amongst colleagues. Most of the edits are targeted and textual, so very hopefully tomorrow morning at the latest, let us see the updated version and approve it here. Thank you.
I think the ABs have it, and so the Secretariat would like you to get back to us with a new document, and let's see how we move. So let's go for lunch, and we shall come back at 13:30, that is 1:30, to continue with our discussions going to the next agenda items, and hoping that we shall have a document maybe by today late evening, so that people are about, they can go or read through it and then come back prepared tomorrow instead of wasting time again going. We would be very glad if the draft can be shared with us online so that we come here when we are prepared. I don't know whether that is doable, but it is my request and my hope. Thank you. Rajiv, can you say something on that?
The Secretariat is going to make an attempt to revise the document in consultation with the chairs and then circulate it. But it would also be helpful for editorial issues if means we may have missed out something. If you can send to me or the Secretariat the editorial changes which you would like to have, it would be very helpful for us.
Thank you. Good appetite.